Tamika, Robert, Howard, Sano, Michael Thompson, how are you? Tamika, Robert.
Good evening, everybody. I'm doing excellent.
Good.
How's everyone doing?
Good. Thank you for asking.
All right.
Well, we are live, everyone. Thank you for joining. Good evening and welcome to the 18th Community Advisory Committee meeting. It's always a pleasure to meet with all of our stakeholders to gain more of your insight and your input on our common interest to help to improve the conditions and services at NYCHA. Safety and security is always and has always been a great topic of importance to our residents, and it is at the top of our agenda tonight, whereas we're pleased to have members from the NYPD. We have James Secreto, who heads NYCHA's Safety and Security. We have Howard Gottsman. We have Michael Thompson from NYPD, and they're at the top of our agenda. We're going to start with Robert Gottsman, because we know that he has some commitments later. He asked to be moved to the top of the agenda. So, Mr. Gottsman, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. How are you? Thank you for accommodating the needs. I'm sure everybody knows what kind of a day we had yesterday in public housing, as well as the rest of the city, and I greatly appreciate it. I just wanted to do a year-to-date overview and then a monthly overview of what crime looks like in public housing. We're trending much like the rest of the city. Overall crime, unfortunately, is up. It's up less in public housing. We're up about 7.5%, and that's going back to January 1st through this past Sunday, December 4th. Significant, though, is the violence. The violence for the year is down. Our homicides in public housing are cut in more than half. We're about 53% down, 41 homicides versus 87. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't include the recent violence that happened yesterday in public housing. But our shootings for the year are also similarly down. We're about 16% down. And again, that's similar to the rest of the city. So we're definitely looking a little better there. For the last month, which we call our 28-day period, we're doing very well. Homicides are down about 84%, 1 versus 6. And even overall crime is down about 4.5%, with shootings down about 40%. So we do like the way crime's looking in public housing. Obviously, we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're going to keep fighting until we get that number down to beyond pre-pandemic levels. One thing I did want to talk about is the initiatives we have in public housing, and you'll hear from possibly Chief Secreto later. I'm not sure if he's going to speak, but the homelessness initiative that we did so successfully last winter through the spring. It took a bit of a hiatus during the summer because we had other programs going on, and the homelessness was not as big of an issue. So with the change in the weather, it has become an issue again, and we have started those initiatives back up. Another initiative I'd like to discuss is motorcycles, motorbikes, ATVs, gasoline-powered vehicles in public housing. So I don't want to speak for NYCHA. They have their own regulations. However, there are individuals who feel it is necessary to store their motorcycle, their ATV, their gasoline-powered vehicle inside of a NYCHA building, inside. That is extremely dangerous. Even in the hallway, a public hallway, if you have a kid that is bored, like we had in 2014, and he lit a unattended mattress, a mattress that someone was throwing out. He lit it on fire. He dropped a cigarette to see what would happen. that resulted in the death of a police officer and the serious maiming of his partner, who till this day is not the same. She's no longer a police officer because of it. If we leave gasoline powered vehicles in hallways, we're asking for trouble. And therefore, I spoke to the fire marshals a long time ago because of the level of danger that poses. The NYPD will remove gasoline powered vehicles from hallways. Since January 1st, we have removed well over 600 of those vehicles. And because we can't just take them out and leave them outside because they belong to somebody, we have to invoice them and account for them. In New York City, it's almost impossible to pick a vehicle like that back up because they're illegal to ride in New York City. The majority of them, especially the ATVs and the dirt bikes. So unless somebody's going to show up with a trailer, we're going to invoice them. They're going to go to the property clerk. And if they remain unclaimed, they're going to be destroyed. So we really urge the residents, the visitors, those staying overnight in public housing, do not leave these vehicles inside the hallways. They are extremely dangerous, and they're against the rules. So that initiative continues. I just wanted to briefly mention that. I'll be happy to answer the questions I could answer. Just if there are any questions about what happened, the events that happened yesterday. I know everybody has access to the news, to the media. Just bear in mind, what happened is still an active investigation, and there is a very active prosecution. And therefore, I can't get into the details. I will say that all these city agencies worked very well together to apprehend who we believe was responsible for what happened yesterday. And I just want to thank everybody for all their help. I was out there myself, as well as the police commissioner, all the chiefs, all the newly assigned chiefs in their new role. It was a real team effort last night with a very good result. Unfortunately, several people did get shot and are no longer with us. And, this is what we've been talking about now for, I see, well over 3 years, the inordinate amount of violence coming out of public housing. It's really something we have to get a handle on. So that's my update. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I just want to not go into too much detail to risk the successful prosecution of the events of yesterday.
So, excellent. Thank you so much. So for those of you, I'm not Asha. I'm Edna Wells Handy. Asha had an emergency and has asked me to step in. And as we all know, those are some big shoes to follow. So bear with me. I see we have the hand up from Lilith Lozano. Ms. Lozano, please ask your question.
Yes. It saddens me to hear once again we're losing such precious lives, especially in this time. But I'm just tired of frankly having this dialogue. Why we've had 3 administrations under safety and security, they reassured us of certain things, and it still hasn't come to fruition. As far as the motorcycles are concerned, or those e-bikes, I have them in my development, and unfortunately, the 409 doesn't answer too much of anything that I ask them to do, unless I get Danny Barber to intercede, which is something unconscionable. We have exterior, interior, poor lighting. We have criminal elements still in our developments. The police department says they can't remove certain things because of NYCHA. They come out and say that they can't get rid of the illegal parking going on after hours when we're waiting for emergency vehicles to, save another precious life or throw out the garbage. That still hasn't come to fruition. Neither has safety and security meeting with CAC to discuss the concerns that we had already went over all over the issues when Mr. Nelson was here. I just think that it's time that, I'm not going to use the word transparency because it's useless to me. I'm very upset over the unnecessary lives, precious lives that we're losing because of, two different agencies not getting into mind about entrances, and the doors are messed up, and there's some new initiative that's supposed to happen. I heard about that 2.5 years ago. Now we have a new person in charge of safety and security, and CCOP has yet to hear about it. I mentioned this to CCOP again because we meet every Tuesday. And it's a long, dragged out process of us discussing what we should do, what we shouldn't do when we hear the cries of the residents around the city of New York. What I like to see is that I appreciate respectfully what you have, expressed to us and what's been going on. But the truth of the matter is that we're still living under filth and squalor. We're still living in areas which is not safe. We don't have NCO officers. I did speak to Bart. We're thinking about trying to do something on a citywide level to address what's going on. So all I'm asking, and I'll yield the floor, is that we need to go back and sit at the table to discuss, not discuss it, have a plan of action, and finally see this initiative that safety and security put in place, because I've already put forward to my colleagues and they're looking forward to hearing it or seeing it.
Okay, so Ms. Lozano, and we appreciate your concerns. For those of who are new to the CAC or the Community Advisory Committee, this is one of the reasons for it, is to bring together the different agencies that have some aspect of the issue that we're looking at so that we can have a coordinated effort. And so we appreciate your concern and your recommendation. And that's a great segue to bring to the mic, so to speak, Chief Secreto. Thank you for joining us. Chief Secreto is the head of safety and security for NYCHA, and so we yield the floor to you, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ms. Wells Handy. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I try not to take things said on these calls personally, but I've heard my position mentioned no fewer than like 3 or 4 times just now. Ms. Lozano, if you want to meet with me, if you want CCOP to meet with me, I'm available anytime that you want. You just say when. Some of the things are in my control. I control the cameras, the security guards, resident watch, but some of the things are not within my control. And certainly the things that happened over the last 24 hours, doors had nothing to do with that. Cameras had nothing to do with that. Lighting had nothing to do with that. But with that being said, my agenda items, I think we want to speak about the interaction with the fire department. I see Chief Thompson on. I would like to see how we can make things better between NYCHA and the fire department. And listen, you guys over the last few news cycles, rappelling off of 21 stories and saving people, you're incredible. But with that being said, I just would like us to work better together. I don't know that we meet with the police department, like say quarterly or monthly. I would like to see if we could set up something like that with FDNY so that we can, work out, some of the things that aren't going right. For example, the fobs. Now, my office also deals with the key fobs and the keys, and we try to make sure that every engine company, every ladder company has at least 2 fobs apiece. And if they lose any, reach out to us, we'll replace it. But that still seems to not work the way it was intended. So I just don't know how we can fix it. I think maybe if we could have a meeting with the hierarchy, maybe borough by borough, maybe once a month or quarterly or whatever, and we can get out like what I'd like to see happen, and you guys could see, let us know what's the problem on the NYCHA side. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief. Michael Thompson, would you like to respond to the offer?
Sure.
Of quarterly
Good evening,
meetings?
sorry about my camera. Good evening, everybody. Chief, to your point regarding the key fobs. So when when I started working in fire operations about 3 years ago, I took an initiative to change the system for the fire department. Instead of 2 key fobs being randomly issued to a unit, every unit now has 3 key fobs issued to them. We also instituted a fallback system, so no unit should ever be without a working key fob. If a unit needs a key fob, the administrative battalion that unit is assigned to has 3 spares in their drawer, so they could be issued them immediately. It took some of the lag out of having the key fobs replaced. And I do agree, I absolutely 100% agree, we should meet, frequently to address, some of the issues we've had with forcible entry, us forcing entry to doors. I had received a few since the last meeting that I have looked into. When I do get them, I have to go through a very extensive incident history base. So it's not the easiest for us to pinpoint. But what I would like to do in the future is, if we have an incident where someone took a door, that's our language, where someone forced entry into a building that had a working key fob, we would like to address it right away. Like, we need to be able to, because what happens is, as time goes on, say it's a week or two, and we get it, and then it's just not, we kind of have to do, I would like to see it done more quickly. I think we could be more effective. Moving forward on our end, we are going to do, the FDNY is going to do a tips from training initiative, because it is quite possible that not everyone understands the key fob. We do have fallback systems where we're supposed to call a number when the door doesn't activate. I know from personal experience that doesn't always, I'm not waiting. Like, if somebody it calls for an emergency or a fire, I can't wait for our dispatcher to make a phone call. But what I can tell you is, in my experience, our first go-to is to knock on a window and get someone to an occupant to open the door for us, because the forcible entry to those doors are not easy. They are it's very complicated. It's very labor intensive. I also think that sometimes units, now, when they do go for a response, I may be a little long-winded here. When they do go on a response and they do have to force entry, a lot of times what we do is we backtrack and go over what we did. So if we are there on a response where we had to force entry, units will use that as a training opportunity to go over what just transpired, how they got in the door. Because remember, if we don't have these doors we don't have any of these doors. So if we have to respond
So
to
you
a
don't have
fire,
them at the training academy?
no, not these particular. These are very particular doors. We do not have
Perhaps
access.
we could get them.
That's
for
what.
the
That's what.
training.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm going. If we could get one per borough, and we could do a training initiative where we go around, I think it would be extremely beneficial for us, because we do have to know how to. I'm not saying we have to know how to get in these doors when all else fails.
So Chief, that's an excellent departure on this, because we hear that sometimes it is used as training, rightfully or wrongfully, or perception or misperception. So
Yes.
if a possible remedy is to get you access to these doors so that there could be controlled training around it, then that's really something that we would like to take a look at. And perhaps that could be, agenda item number 1 in your next meeting with Chief Secreto.
That is a great idea, Mike. It'd be expensive. I hope.
I know they're expensive.
We're gonna find the money. We'll find the money.
Okay, but I also gotta say that a lot of, if you were trying to get in when, like you said, Mike, when time is of the essence, and an extra second could mean, disaster. I get that, man. I get it. but I'm talking about when they have the key fob and they're bending the door, and the super comes up and says, "Hey man, I got the key right here," and they say, "No, step back. We're practicing." Those are the times I'm talking about, and that's something that we can fix. I just think we can.
Chief, I absolutely agree with you 100%.
Well, I think that's a good way to kind of end this in the sense that.
Hey, listen, these guys are my heroes. Please, I don't want anybody to think
follow this up and
otherwise.
Our next
I agree, Chief. I agree with you 100%. And
so perhaps at the next CAC meeting, we can come up with a action plan. What would it take to get doors to practice on? Perhaps we can follow, Chief, the complaints that you have so that you could do more of an incident report, Chief, on it. And we can really kind of learn how to go forward on this, because it sounds like a solvable issue for us.
Yeah, and I don't know how to say it. So we're we're creatures of habit too. Unfortunately, when we do get the opportunity, because they are limited, we do take advantage of it. So it's sometimes the perception is that, hey, the FDNY is here, they're breaking the door. But meanwhile, we were there 20 minutes ago. We already broke in. Now we're just going over what we did. So I've been on the other end. I've also been there where people saying they have a key, and then they don't have a key. It's
a complicated issue. So we all agree on
we can do better.
The problem and not the blame.
Yeah, we can do better.
I
absolutely agree.
Excellent. So I see we have two hands up. I know Joe Gross and Robert Hall have their hands up, but Chief, are you finished with your?
No, I am. Thank you, and great job. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Chief. Anytime.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief, anytime you need to reach out to me, you can just call me on my cell.
Okay.
24/7.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Mr. Hall.
Yes, I didn't want to spoil that thunder, but we had this conversation, I believe, 2 months ago, and the answer was for the fire department to knock on the doors, and they were also going to report any doorknobs or things that needed work, and they were going to help do the repairs and make public safety aware of what was needed. So that's a good thing, all right? I also want to mention the fact that if a development does not have key fobs, they should not have it. I am totally against key fobs in its entirety, all right? I happen to be in a development where there's an egress, and I'm hoping to eventually have the front door key open up the back door key so that one key handles both the back and the front. And that should help the situation a lot more than those key fobs. I want to talk to Chief Secreto because I've been very fortunate. In 2023, I will be receiving over $500,000 in monies for cameras. And I need your expertise to make sure that I get the maximum effectiveness from the cameras that I'm going to install in my development. So I will be looking out for you, Chief Secreto. I rest.
Excellent. And
what development is that?
This is Christmas.
What development?
Gun Hill.
Gun Hill. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so excellent.
Excuse me,
we do have an agenda.
They still think we're consolidating.
I'm sorry, we have a line here, and we still have a whole agenda to get through. So I'm going to ask I know we have Joe Gross and Tamika Williams-Moore. So if we have a question there, please, let's get the question, and we'll kind of hold the comments towards the end. Joe.
Yes, I would like to add, I agreeing totally with Ms. Lozano about the safety security issues. I think we all know the issues. The only issue what we have is not getting executed. We have to create a chain email between the leaders with NYCHA, with the fire department, the police department, and we should start communication topics, e-bikes, fire safety issues. Everything should go in an email chain back and forth, and I think we're gonna accomplish a lot more.
And that's an excellent idea. So I think, Chief, we're putting an agenda together for you with your meeting with the other chief. So so that will be on your agenda, on the agenda for you to report back as to how that meeting went. But we're looking at e-bikes, and we're looking at key fobs, and we're looking at training doors. So
Okay,
we
and
have
you have Inspector Goddard's on the call as well. He's involved as well.
exquisite. Okay, Tamika,
And I want to say one more point, and I think NYCHA, our development management, local property management, have to start enforcing the e-bike. Probably we should put it in the monthly bills, the letters about the e-bikes, a campaign in the building on the posters, and we have to start enforcing it. Just talking with no action is, we're gonna come back in a couple of months with the same issue. We have to start really enforcing the law, because we don't want to lose any more lives. We want to save lives, and we want to make sure everybody's safe.
which is everyone's goal. Chief, your face looks quizzical.
Yeah, I gotta disagree with Mr. Gross there. We have taken, and I'm sure Inspector Gottesman probably has the figures, but over 600 of those bikes out of hallways and in the courtyards and what have you. And I'm sure, if Inspector Gottesman is on still, he'll tell you, we've taken over 600 bikes in the last year or two.
You're right.
Any sense of what the universe is? Do we have a sense of that represents how many illegally stored bikes at NYCHA? Does anyone know that?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So you've taken over 600.
Yeah, no, that's a number nobody could really know. You're talking, that would be an unknown. Obviously,
it's an unknown.
It would be many times more than that. Obviously, some developments, the more we take out, the more we get back in. Our main focus now is really the gasoline powered. That's the most, we see it as the most dangerous. You have gasoline tanks that are easily accessible. All you need is some kid who's quote unquote bored or someone who wants to start trouble, and you could have a real tragedy. The e-bikes, I don't want to, this meeting is not for this, but just e-bikes, the law is not so clear yet on e-bikes. NYCHA may have its own internal rules and regulations that they want to enforce, but I know the city council is starting to take up the issue of e-bikes, not just in public housing, but in every building, because public housing isn't necessarily any more dangerous in terms of any dangers posed by an electric bike, right?
So Deputy Inspector, so that's a good segue, because do we have City Council Member Aviles on? And perhaps she can give us some more insight.
I don't think she's on yet, Edna.
She is not.
Okay. Do we have a representative from her? No. So
No.
okay, so let's move on to Dan Brownell. Dan will be representing the monitor, who unfortunately could not join us at this time, but Dan, mighty second, will provide us with some updates in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Edna. So I'm going to keep it short, and if there's time near the end of the meeting, I can add some additional things, but there are just a couple things I wanted to say. First, Chief Secreto and Captain Thompson, is you guys know, we on the monitor team are here to facilitate you guys and the work you're doing. You're not in this all by yourself. Chief Secreto, I still know that you don't have sufficient staff to do, this very large job you have to do. So, we're here to assist in any way we can, which I think that. And we have retired Lieutenant Fasano on the call here with us, and I think Fred Baldino is also listening in. So we definitely would like to be part of those conversations with you and FDNY, if nothing else, to support you guys in what you're trying to do. So that's one thing.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah, and the next thing is, so next Wednesday, December 14th, the City Council Member Aviles is going to be holding a hearing on NYCHA's heat readiness, which of course is a perfect time to do that in mid-December, before the weather likely will get cold in late December, probably through February. A week ago, the BART released a pretty extensive report on data and data analytics and metrics The report is on our website. It's got a lot in it. I wanted to talk just very briefly about some of the things as it relates to heat. So in the report, we did a summary of the heating season that ended in May, last year's heating season, and then did an analysis of what's called the summer overhaul program, which happens between the end of May and the beginning of October, where essentially all the heating equipment is cleaned and maintained and repairs are made, and in some cases complete equipment is replaced. And so I can tell you, as we indicated in the report, that NYCHA had a much more successful summer preventive maintenance program this year than they did last year, where we had a lot of concerns that they just didn't get to a lot of the equipment. The heating department is also going through a major restructuring, which they've been doing to staff up, get additional staffing, do more training, set up a data analytics team within the heat department, and some other pretty innovative things that they're doing. And so as that process continues and that department is better resourced and better and management gets better resources, I think we're going to see that the heating services provided improve. This year, so far, there have been significantly fewer heating outages at NYCHA than there were for the same period last year. And as I said, that kind of wasn't a surprise because we knew they had a much better summer in preparing for the season. The one thing I'll say, not to take away from NYCHA's efforts, is that the temperatures this year, based on the analytics we did, have been a bit warmer than last year. Warmer temperatures mean the equipment isn't stressed as much. So that obviously helps. That having been said, the significant decline in outages, at least so far, I think is promising. Doesn't mean there aren't problems still. One of the things that NYCHA is committed to doing, and we're really pushing them as well, is to focus, provide more focus to unit heating issues that aren't part of larger outages. We know that some radiators don't work. We know that heat distribution systems don't work. So even if the boiler is producing appropriate heat, that doesn't mean that it's getting to all the units in the building. This piping is old. In most cases, it's as old as the building themselves. The pipes get clogged or the pipes leak, which means that oftentimes the heat won't get to the upper level apartments. That's a problem, of course, for the residents in those apartments, because no matter how well the boilers work, if the distribution system isn't working, then it's not going to get to those units. And particularly when it gets cold, that's a big problem. And so, as I said, that's one of the things that NYCHA is working on, and we're working with them to get a better sense of which apartments really have chronic problems, to see what kind of extra measures can be taken to give them proper heat. And then, as I said, the report itself deals with all the pillar areas: elevators, abatement of lead-based paint, mold and leaks, pests and waste management, and everything else. The other thing that it talks about is the field inspections that the monitor team does. Chris Fasano, who's on the call, is one of the supervisors for the monitor team. His people go out, focus on waste management issues. We have from another subcontractor who are experts in property management, do boiler room and elevator inspections. We provide all the things we find and see, particularly where things need to be addressed to NYCHA, so that they better know where they need to go and have workers either conduct maintenance and or repairs or replace equipment. So anyway, at this point, Edna, I think that's enough. And if there's time, the report's almost 60 pages, so I could go on forever. People would probably hang up. But anyway, if there's time near the end of this meeting, I'm happy to add more, but I don't want to take away from what other people want to contribute.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dan. And we can just stop action just a minute, because we have some visitors from the Manhattan DA's office and from the Brownsville Partnership as potential joiners here. But just to give a sense of where we are, and Mr. Hall, you mentioned 2 months ago, we were talking about the key fobs, right? Well, the fact is we were talking about the key fobs because we had heard about it. And we have the chief here who said, I'm going to look into it. And he started looking into it, and we've gotten some traction. But like everything, particularly in government, it's not perfect. And now we're going to move it to the next level. So now we've got Secreto and the chief dating. And so we're gonna get some action going on here. So I think that this is exactly the kind of thing that was intended from the setting up of the community advisory council. It is going to be an iterative process. It's not going to be fast, because as Dan and his explanation of the report will show you, the role of the monitorship is root cause analyses. And the key is, you got to uncover layers to get to root causes, and we're moving towards that. So we thank you, Chief, and we thank you, both Chiefs Secreto and Thompson, and Deputy Inspector Gottesman, for coming together around this issue. So I'd like to jump off on something that you said, however, Mr. Hall, that you have money. What a concept to really start looking at some of the issues, and you wanted the assistance of Chief Secreto. Exactly the kind of thing that we want to happen. And in that light, I think we have a question or comment from one of the members, a former member in her older role as a resident leader, Tamika Williams-Moore. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes. I have a question for Thompson, and I also have a question for either Secreto or Gottesman. FDNY, so we're talking about breaking doors. So I want to know, once FDNY breaks the door, how fast is it going to be fixed, and who's fixing the door? And if FDNY is going to contribute to the cost of fixing the door. To NYPD. How does NYPD utilize NYCHA's CCTV footage? What is the NYCHA CCTV conviction rate? Are there barriers to conviction if the crime is on CCTV footage? What is the barrier to conviction if the footage is available? Excuse me.
I'll answer that, because I'm not sure that Inspector Gottesman is still with us. The CCTV, when an incident occurs, in some developments, the police department can look at the video footage themselves if the management office is open. If it's not open, they call us, and we come and we get access to the management office, or they can also come to some of our locations that we have. We have one in Cypress houses. We have one on 56th Street in Manhattan. We have another one at Bronx River that the police department can come and view the cameras as well. So, and that's any time of night, day or night, that they can have access to our footage. We then would make a disc, a copy of the incident, and we would also go to court with the detectives and testifies to the chain of custody of that disc, and that our expertise and training in video surveillance and the process. I don't know the statistics on convictions. I don't know that, and I don't know that it's all related to the CCTV. There might be other factors. People might not want to press charges in NYCHA for obvious reasons. And I don't know if there was any other parts of your question that I missed, but if I did, you can say it again.
Right. So my question pretty much was, if it's not a victimless crime, if someone is shot and it's on CCTV camera and available for NYPD to use, is there a barrier to conviction if the victim does not testify? Can NYCHA or does NYPD still use the footage for conviction? Is there a barrier to conviction? I mean, if the witness is not testifying, but the footage is on camera.
So
that's a question probably for the DA's office. But I think they could still move forward if they have it on video. But I've seen, and I've only been now with NYCHA for 14 months. You would think like, hey, we have a camera there, this is a ground ball, but not necessarily. So, you know, there was one shooting at, I'm gonna say Marlboro houses, and I would imagine that the perpetrator knew that the camera was there, but he had a hoodie up and he had his back facing the camera. And I don't know if he was identified by that video footage, but you know, it's kind of complicated sometimes. But one of the things we're working with the police department is trying to have, they have a DOS, it's an integration system, whereas the police can look at video in the precinct and in the PSA or whatever, and we want to expand that universe. Whereas more developments are in that DOS awareness system, they call it, whereas they can look at the cameras from the precinct and look at, say, Vladeck houses or Smith houses from PSA 4 or from the 7th or from the 9th. We're working on expanding that. And that's a lot of money, but we're working on expanding that.
Thank you, Chief. The reason why I asked is because we've had some conversations with a couple of captains, and we were told that the barriers to conviction relies on victim testimony. So if barriers to conviction rely on victim testimony, what point does the camera serve?
I can jump in if that's okay. My name's Estelle Stryker Santiago. I'm the director of the Community Partnerships Unit for Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. And I think as was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of factors that go into a conviction. For sure, having video is helpful. Having video and the victim's testimony is ideal. Can we go forward when we only have the victim's testimony? Sometimes it depends on the factors. Can we go forward when we only have video and no victim? A little harder. It depends on factors like was just mentioned. Does the video include really good depiction of the person who allegedly committed the crime? It's not just having the video statistically means we're more likely to convict. It's having the right video and other circumstances that have to be looked at by the other, types of evidence that have to be looked at by the prosecutor. And it's also, the video isn't always necessarily just of the crime. It may be the individual going to the area where the crime ends up being committed, but it's helpful as part of a series of different things that will lead to us being able to have a strong case. So happy to, follow up on that more. I think Ms. Williams-Moore, that your point about videos is really important. And one thing we need to work with PD, we need to work with NYCHA to make sure that we know where the videos are and that we're getting the videos for our cases. And I know PD works closely with us on that, but there's, as I think was stated earlier, there's always room for improvement. We can always do better. So that's why I'm here. So if there's anything that we can do to make sure, at least, in Manhattan, and I can talk to my counterparts in the other DA's offices, anything to do with evidence and cases and making sure that our office can seek justice. We're here. We want to, this is really important. And I'm really glad that we've been invited to be a part of this group. So I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have you on this.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was going to answer the first part of the question.
Oh,
about the doors.
Let's wrap this up. This one, and then we'll get to your first part of the question. But in terms of Mr. Hall, you're starting afresh with the monies for your cameras. So having information about its role in first investigation and then in prosecution is really important. So I hope ADA Santiago, that you'll think about a long-term relationship with the CAC, and you'll
Let me just clarify one thing. I am not a prosecutor. I'm not an ADA, but I am sort of the connector to all the appropriate ADAs on different topics. So I know exactly who to bring to the table if the topic is going to be cameras and videos. And so, yes, you know what my job is, what you just said, building relationships and making sure that things like this are getting connected to our office. So absolutely. Whoever wants to follow, I'll put my contact information, and whoever wants to follow up on videos or anything else related to my office, I'm available.
Thank you so much. So sorry, Chief, you wanted to answer the first part quickly so we can move on?
Yes. So as far as your question regarding forcible entry or doors that are forced. So when we make any forcible entry, whether it's New York City housing or anybody's home, we don't leave that premises unsecured. If we cannot secure the door before we leave, securing meaning we get it locked, not just shut. We don't leave until we turn it over to the we put in a call request for the NYPD. With New York City housing, there's just one more layer. The same premises. If we force entry into an apartment, if we cannot secure the door and lock it upon leaving, we request NYPD. We also make notification to the borough dispatcher that we forced entry. We give the apartment, and they're required to make notification to New York City Housing Emergency so that the matter is addressed, as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much. And can I ask if everyone can put their phones on or their connections on mute until your time to talk? I love hearing children, but sometimes it's distracting a bit. So thank you. So we're going to go do our round table. I see, Mr. Martinez, you have your hand up, but I'm going to ask you to hold that until you're asked to give your presentation. So let's go with Agnes.
Also, and I'm sorry, Congress Council Member Aviles has joined the meeting.
Oh, she has. Oh, hello.
Happy to have her
How are you?
give her presentation.
So fine. Thank you so much for joining us. And sorry, Agnes, if you can just hold off a minute, we'll ask the council member to give the presentation because we know about her schedule. Not as if everybody else's is not.
I know.
We know that, but
Absolutely.
We're going to give you the kind of respect too if you ask us going forward. So one thing I do want to mention, council members, that what was raised was the matter of the e-bikes. So if you can also update us on that, that would be great.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Apologies. Thank you for the grace. I know you're all super busy, busier than I probably. So I appreciate it. I will have to jump off at 7. But I guess maybe to start on e-bikes, because unfortunately, we have seen what has been in the news. NYCHA we have not had a conversation about e-bikes. So I think that's, it's on the list. So I unfortunately don't have anything to report as of yet. Maybe y'all have some other information about it, but I have not heard a circling back on where we are in those deliberations and considerations. So I think, potentially next CAC meeting, hopefully I'll have something to report on that end. As some of you may know, at the City Council Public Housing Committee, we recently had a meeting on resident engagement. And, a very broad topic, very important topic, because it is really an example of when the rubber meets the road and all the ways that goes wrong and how it leads to mistrust and distrust of NYCHA and honestly, any other entities that are involved in that engagement. So I will say, we haven't been able to distill all the materials that came out of that hearing, but it really did. It spanned from what the structure that NYCHA uses, and obviously over the years, it has restructured its department. It remains relatively consistent in terms of staffing. And so there's a big question around, it is clearly inadequately staffed for 500,000 New Yorkers, right? Where resident engagement needs to be robust. It is moving beyond, I think, the point I pressed over and over again, or at least try to, was that it is not about just engagement, it's about empowerment. And we need to move along that continuum. Because if we are stuck in just providing information that is haphazard sometimes or incomplete, that we just kind of continue to sow the distrust that ultimately undermines all the work that we're trying to do. So there hasn't been a growth in that area. There has been some learnings, and of course, NYCHA, claims that there has been improvements. I will say that there is still a very big gulf between what residents will tell you they experience on a daily basis and what NYCHA says it does or is attempting to do. And so I think a big part of the work is trying to figure out how do we move those 2 points closer together, right? So that so it doesn't feel like a full-on gaslighting, right? Because we know there is progress in dimensions, and sometimes it's really hard to see, particularly when the authority is in crisis, right? Residents are in crisis. So I would say again, it spanned from infrastructure, like what is that team, who's leading it, what is the training of staff, to elections, to the fact that there are many tenant stakeholder groups, much like this CAC group, who are very disparate actually, and don't have clear lines of accountability, both with each other and with NYCHA. And that often residents are offering, solutions and policy ideas that NYCHA is under no obligation to implement with rigor. And so I think, we're going to continue to kind of pursue that. And there was a lot of information that was provided that we need to distill further, and a lot that wasn't, that we need to chase and that they were going to report back. So I haven't received any report back on all the elements that they were not able to answer, that we will continue to pursue and make part of the public record, both so that residents can also dig into the pieces that are meaningful to them. It's very hard to, dive in very deeply to all the dimensions that fall within resident engagement. So I think that's more to come. We will be having a hearing this the 14th around winter preparedness. Again, here, I feel like, I'm not trying to recreate the wheel all the time, but certainly we want some clear indication around, it is a pillar area, right? There is an enormous amount of data and dashboards and work that has been done. And, in many ways, the agency continues to need to be compelled by carrot and stick to kind of meet its obligations, and to really give residents a clear understanding of the level of preparedness and where the authority stands in its readiness to move into the winter heating season. I think, that's what one of the purposes is, to provide for the public record a clearer understanding beyond you go to the website and you see how many outages, and, really want to understand how public dollars are continuing to be deployed or not deployed, with urgency around making sure units are prepared and people are provided with heat and hot water when they so should deserve that service. So I obviously invite all of you to reach out to our office if there are elements here or stories, right, that will help to color some of the challenges that often fall through the gaps. Always open invitation to each of you. And I guess I'll end with, we are looking obviously at 2023 and what those hearings are going to be, and that is kind of an evolving process based on what residents are wanting to dig in on, and there is a lot, as these meetings evidence every single day. Let's see, I just want to make sure. I will just say that, even from our prior hearings, right, we talked about the contracting process. There were still very many gaps that we have to circle back on, because there are constant examples of places that there are still problems. So contractor accountability kind of rears its ugly head over and over again. And we haven't figured out how to drill down in a way to bring the kind of changes and or clarity of information that will help kind of move us forward. We are talking to state colleagues, right? NYCHA is a state authority. I have very limited authority over it, and certainly very little legislation can be done at the city level because of its jurisdictional structure. So we are talking to state colleagues around that, what that looks like as well, and how can we do better collective oversight in a way that is not, duplicative or draining, but how can we use all the tenants, the monitors work, the residents work, and other forms of oversight and accountability to really kind of drive things home that we need. So I guess with that, I think I will leave it there. Again, invite your input, your comments in any ways that you feel will be informative and helpful. So thank you for the work that you're doing and always being present at these meetings. This is an important body, and I would love to see all the kind of tenant bodies that work throughout NYCHA do like a Congress of accountability and figure out how they coordinate and how they truly become decision makers in this entire ecosystem. So I guess with that, I will.
Okay, well, thank you, council member, and we really appreciate your leadership in this space, and we look forward to, all the great work that's going to come out of that leadership. You've not been in the position long, but you've been in a position enough so that you've made a difference already. So we thank you for that. So let's go to our the rest of our members. So Ms. Mack.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have two pieces of news to share with everyone here. You might have seen our Join Us campaign in buses and subways. Here is a screenshot of our website. So the Department for the Aging had recently launched this campaign to welcome older adults and to encourage everyone to come back to our older adult centers and to join us for our services and our meals. And if you go to the Department for the Aging website, there is a place where you type in the zip code that you want to go to, and then it gives you a search to the nearest older adult centers. Here it is. So, or if you want to look for other services, it's all on the website. So I welcome everyone to come and join us. And if you have trouble accessing our website, you can also call 311, and 311 will direct you to our Aging Connect hotline, and our telephone operators will help you look for the nearest older adult center as well. The other piece of information that I would like to share with everyone is our monthly live cooking demonstration. It usually occurs on the third Wednesday of the month at 11 o'clock in the morning. And this is a flyer for the upcoming 3 cooking demonstration for January, February, and March. The one in January is going to be on January 18th at 11 o'clock. And the recipe is Tuscan white beet stew, and it will be conducted in English. The one in February will occur on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, and the recipe will be macaroni and cheese. And this one is also an English session. The third one for March is, the third one will be in March, and it will be on March 15. And the recipe will be fried rice, and this one will be a bilingual session, English and Cantonese. We are also looking for dietitians who are bilingual in Spanish, who can conduct cooking demonstration bilingually in English and in Spanish as well. So feel free to share the flyer. I would also like to say that under one of the grant that we receive at the Department for the Aging, we offer nutrition counseling virtually. I'm typing the email address in the chat. If you know of an older adult who are age 60 or more or older and live in the 5 boroughs and can use the video function of a device, whether it is your smartphone or your laptop, and can do a video session like a Zoom session or WhatsApp or FaceTime, and is interested in receiving free nutrition counseling, please email us with the person's name, phone number, and best time to contact, and our registered dietitian will reach out and schedule a session. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We can always depend on you to show us the way with respect to our seniors and the services that you provide. So we have two members of NYCHA here, and one of the members has to leave. So we're gonna, others, unless you have a pressing, you have to go right now, we're gonna open it to Ms. Rowley, to Davida and to Samantha. If you can give us a kind of quick updates. Rowley Blackman, I'm sorry.
Sure, no worries. Good evening, everyone. Davida Rowley Blackman, Senior Director for Resident Participation and Civic Engagement at NYCHA. Wanted to just give a brief update regarding the elections. I know that this came up before and it was asked of us. So we do have 6 elections occurring in the next week at Brook Ellen Houses, Brownsville Houses, Carlton Manor, Drew Hamilton, Dykeman, and Sotomayor. We did also have 5 sites with unopposed nominations that will be certified in the next week. And those include 1010 East 178th Street, 1325 Franklin, Campos Plaza, Twin Parks East, and WSUR Brownstones, many of which are smaller sites. And then we did have approximately 10 locations with low participation that will need to have their nominations meetings conducted again. So we're strategizing on ways to increase participation for those sites for the January winter election cycle. So wanted to make sure that everyone had information about our upcoming elections. Residents will be provided with interpretation services, and we look forward to having new boards secured at those sites. And then I did want to pass it on to my colleague Samantha to share about the resident roundtable.
Sure. So I'm just going to ask Samantha, do you have a, can you stay a little longer? Because we do have a kind of a listing going on. So if you can hold off for a minute. While we go to Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Rowley Blackman.
Absolutely.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. So I wanted to just discuss a couple of things very quickly. One, NYCHA has a NYCHA, I'm sorry, it's too many NYCHAs. NYCHA has a transparency on its contracts, right? There's this contract system, I don't know how to say it, but it's online, and there's filters on that, and it shows all of NYCHA's contracts. I was just demonstrating that earlier today at one of my meetings, and they're currently at 1,900 contracts. One of the filters that's needed on that transparency is a Section 3 filter. We need to see what contracts are Section 3. I think that that's a reasonable request. NYCHA has currently, in my last estimate, has over $12 billion in active contracts right now. Having that small addition of Section 3 contracts isolated would be a significant help for us to be able to help Section 3 work better. I'm on the Section 3 committee. I think that that would be a very good addition. Safety and security. Now, I believe that for many of the doors, I know that we was talking about key fobs, but not all of our developments have key fobs, and this transition is very expensive. So for the developments that have older components and have difficulty in keeping their building entrance doors closed, I heard that there is a specific handle that can be placed on it. That's a 90-degree handle, which eliminates leverage, because one of our main issues is the door popping. And so the handles that's there now makes it easy for persons outside or even persons who live in the building to pop the door, bust the magnets, and create a continuous repair log for these building entrance doors. If we can do an initiative to put these clam handles onto these doors, which would reduce a lot of that repair cost. And we all know that $1 in prevention, I believe, equates to $7 saved in repairs. And so I think that prevention and investment into these building entrance doors would be significantly appreciated. There's another thing, this not criminalizing homelessness and this approach that they have. And I know that the inspector had left, but when we look at the laws that we have here protecting public housing residents, and then we see that these agencies such as NYPD put administrative obstructions to it, it endangers us. And the reason why this is being done so easily and haphazardly is because of our community, because 90% of public housing residents are Black and Hispanic. And we have to start mentioning that more often, that this in many instances is a race thing. And we need to correct that. Stop putting these additional barriers to our safety. If the law says that it's trespassing, then treat it as such. And we need the district attorney's office to do the same. And I know that they left. But that is something that is sorely needed. You know, we got administrative barriers that are not required. Lastly, FDNY recently New York City recently put a civil rights bill together on the FDNY about diversity. I believe that NYCHA needs the same for its trade. The diversity in the trades department, the skill craft department, we need to know what that diversity looks like. In NYCHA, when you look at the city's top 100 overtime paid, top 100 employees paid in overtime, out of almost 160 agencies, I believe, 150 agencies, 30% of that top 100 is NYCHA. And usually the number 2 highest paid is a NYCHA, is the same NYCHA person. We need to see the diversity in that, right? Given that in the last, from 2010 to 2020, it's been identified that NYCHA has spent the $7.8 billion payroll bill. We want to know how many of us are on that trade log, especially given that every trade employee in NYCHA has to be a part of one of the outside unions. And so this is the only agency that all of the union workers are outside, but they must be unionized before they can work in this agency. And that grossly restricts our access to these quality career employment. Not only does it obstruct that access, it also obstructs our access to Section 3 employment. And so I believe that NYCHA's taking it upon themselves to give us a diversity listing, similar to what the FDNY bill that was recently created is asking for, would be a step in the right direction without us having to fight for legislation. And with that, I want to thank you all for listening to my spiel. And I appreciate you all.
You know, we always learn something from you, Mr. Martinez. So do we have anyone from NYCHA operations or strategic planning? So I think that's okay, good. So fine, Ms. Mernouche.
That's right.
Okay, so if we could ask you to give us some sort of reaction to particularly the diversity matter on the Section 3, Ms. Martinez. We are working with NYCHA procurement. They're looking at Section 3, and we're working on the tracker. So this might be something to look at in terms of the capital tracker. But if we can get your response to it from NYCHA, Ms. Mernouche, that'd be really great.
So I don't have a response prepared for what Mr. Martinez just shared, but I do have updates on the capital tracker, as well as the annual recertification days.
That'd be great.
I can proceed with that. Sure. So I know this was a previous question, I think, from previous meetings about the capital tracker. And I can share that the current tracker is being used by residents and elected officials and their staff, as well as the NYCHA staff in their work with elected officials and residents. When you visit the tracker, there is a survey that pops up where users can share feedback as well as what they'd like to see. But also NYCHA is working on a significantly more enhanced next version tracker, which is supposed to launch in May of 2023. And that next version is supposed to address some of the feedback that has been received. Specifically, it will include development pages for all the developments that integrate capital needs and capital projects, so that users will be able to see what the capital need is in their area, as well as the cost estimates that are associated. And there's also information on planned projects, so not just completed and active projects. And the additional information for each project will also focus on a more detailed project scope. There will be information about the construction management person on site, as well as the field supervisor, the vendor information, and information on where exactly it's happening in the development as well. And there will also be a frequently asked questions section with definitions and an overview of the capital needs assessment, funding, and project process. And I know NYCHA is working on the outreach and communication plan for the launch of that tracker, which more information on that will be available in the coming months. And on the annual recertification process, I can share that there will be the reinstatement of annual recertification days at property management offices across the city with extended office hours to assist residents with completing their recertifications. And I know NYCHA is finalizing the guidance on that should be available either this week or next week.
So, and will there be a Section 3 filter in that capital tracker in May 2023?
I can definitely find out.
Yeah, if I can answer that. So we are working with NYCHA in a bi-weekly working group. And we're starting tomorrow. And so we will raise it in the meeting tomorrow. And we will also raise it with the with Sergio Penique, the procurement head, who is looking at Section 3. So that so that's really well along the way of moving that concern of yours. Ms. Merlouche, is it possible to bring the matter of the diversity request to someone who might be appropriate to take a look at this? Can we ask that?
I can definitely reach out. I can definitely reach out and report back next time.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And I know I see Ms. Mack, you have your hand up, but I've got to get to JT Falcone, who's just graduated with his MSW, and so he's back to full speed with us. And when you give your update, JT, if you could also talk about one of the things that came out of the CAC was the matter of a special hotline for center directors for repairs, and if you can update us on whether any of that has happened.
Thanks, Edna. So JT Falcone, excited to be back after completing my night class portion of my life. I'm coming from United Neighborhood Houses, the membership organization for settlement houses in New York City and New York State. So we've got 40 members in New York City, and they're running about 250 different programs out of 125 sites in NYCHA. So everything from older adult centers, like Agnes was talking about earlier, to cornerstone programs and early childhood education, after school programs for young people. For a long time now, we've found that keeping these centers up and maintained is difficult, especially when those centers are located in the basement of buildings. A lot of the flooding and leaking travels down into those sites. So we've worked directly with NYCHA, we've worked with DFTA, we've worked with UICD, and we've had a lot of opportunities through the CAC to coordinate, to figure out ways to make sure that those centers have access to NYCHA reps to ensure that repairs happen quickly and don't interrupt services. I will say that while we've had a lot of progress, NYCHA's recent turnover, it feels as though from the outside, at least, that NYCHA has seen a lot of turnover. And this has led to several of the contacts who were helping push this along, changing positions. It would be really helpful, I think, for us to find a way to ensure that folks who are working in centers know who they should be talking to at NYCHA for different challenges that come up. So making sure that NYCHA knows who's running the centers and that the folks who are running the centers know who to reach out to at NYCHA when there's a repair issue or repair need. Also, we've had success before working directly with DFTA and DYCD to coordinate with NYCHA and ensuring that DFTA and DYCD are supplied up-to-date information and contact for different folks at NYCHA who can help coordinate things. I think before the restructure at NYCHA, we had worked to keep an up-to-date RAM chart. I know that chart has shifted under the restructure, so getting back to keeping something up to date so that folks know who to talk to. Ultimately, at the end of the day, our members and other community-based organizations who are working out of NYCHA are trying to find the best path forward in most circumstances. So sometimes DFTA or DYCD are able to help with repairs. Sometimes our members have money to help with repairs. Sometimes we need NYCHA to pay for or come in and fix something. And sometimes we need approval to just get it done on our own so that we can move things along and not interrupt programming. But all of that starts with having the right people to connect with and communicate with. And so coming here to think about, as hopefully turnover has slowed down, if there's a way that we could resurface those discussions about keeping up-to-date contact lists, because when we don't know who to talk to, then we're very stuck. That's my dog saying hello. His name is Buster. He's a hound, as you can tell. So I'm going to go on mute until he calms down.
Okay. So thank you for this. And so if we recall, Eva Trimble, who's now COO, was one of the major movers in this. So we'll follow up with her office on that, and maybe there's someone else that we can address it. I see Ms. Lozano, you have your hand up, but we only have like 13
That's
minutes.
okay. I'm just gonna say.
Yes.
that
Okay.
we-
So hold on. If I could ask you to hold on a minute, because we still have to hear from Mr.
No
Hall.
problem.
Did we hear from you?
Problem.
Okay, and then Ms. Rogers. Do we still need to hear from you, Ms. Rogers?
Sure. So I'll be brief and quick. Can you hear me? It said I was muted. Okay. So the last time we spoke about roundtable 2 months ago, I had said that we have fully staffed back up to 32 members and that the subcommittees would start. So I'm happy to report that the subcommittees have started. So our 32 members then break up into 4 subgroups of 8 members each. And they focus in separate areas to continue conversation. So in the first year of Roundtable, if you all remember, the focused areas were safety and security, quality assurance, quality of life, and management practices. And so in those 4 separate focused areas, the group as a whole made recommendations to the Federal Monitor's Office and also to NYCHA. And so in this second year, in the second iteration of Roundtable, if you will, it's now implementation phase of those recommendations. And so the conversation now continues. We have broken out into subcommittees, but those subcommittees are now broken out based on those recommendations and how to move them forward. So for instance, quality assurance, some of the recommendations that quality assurance made was in areas such as, contract accountability. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier, and how vendors are selected and, doing away with like the lowest bidder and certain things like that. And so those recommendations were made. And now as we move the conversations forward in implementation, NYCHA has to respond. But in that response, NYCHA is saying, is this what your idea is? So we took your suggestion and your recommendation under advisement. This is what we can do or cannot do. And is this what you meant when you made this suggestion or recommendation? And so, for instance, Roundtable is meeting next week on the 15th. And so as a follow-up to conversation, one of the first departments from NYCHA that is presenting to the Roundtable is the Quality Assurance Department to give feedback on where they are with those recommendations and suggestions. And so right now, the biggest update is that we're in the implementation phase of those suggestions and recommendations. And so more to come on that.
Okay, well, that is good to hear, because we were wondering what happened to the recommendations. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that they're now being presented to Resident Roundtable 2.0, and they're going to be diving into those recommendations to determine feasibility and implementation if possible. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. So something as simple as a recommendation was add a chat feature to the My NYCHA app. And so IT said, that's great. Yes, we should do that. And so now the response then is, yes, this was great. This is how we're going to do it. And this is when it's going to launch. And so part of that is, let's demo it, right, to residents and see, is this feasible? Is this the workability that you wanted? And if so, now, we can, either implement it, fix it based on the recommendation, further recommendations, and then, right, launch and execute. And then that's a check mark, right? We can check that off and the recommendations and say, yes, this was implemented, and now move on to the next.
And will that be for all 43 or so recommendations?
Yes, all 46 recommendations are taken under advisement. And what we did with those 46 recommendations is we broke them out further into those 4 subcommittees. So if 5 of these are in quality assurance, right, those 5 recommendations then will be discussed by that group. If 8 of them were safety and security related, right, 8 of those 46 recommendations were safety and security related, then the safety and security subcommittee will then further that conversation, and so forth and so on. So, yep, that is how we structured the subcommittees based on those recommendations.
Appreciate that information. So we have only like 8 minutes. So did I get everyone make their reports? So I know Ms. Mack, you had a question at one time or response, and Ms. Lozano, you did too. So Ms. Mack?
Yeah,
Mr.
Falcon.
If you need a different pronoun, let me know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Mr. Falcon said everything that I wanted to say, so I echo him and I thank him for raising all the questions that we want to raise from our community center partners. I am hoping that NYCHA's app, where you can type in your ticket number and be able to find out the status of that ticket, I hope that system will hopefully apply to the community centers as well, because calling the hotline multiple times to track on your ticket number is just not an effective way of doing things. And thank you.
Okay. Well, that's great. So we will follow that up with an email to Eva Tremble, who was, as I said, was shepherding this. Ms. Lozano?
Yes, I just wanted to emphasize something that we're going through. CCAP, we're waiting to meet with DFTA because, some of them say they can't get in touch with NYCHA. How about locking resident leaders out of their spots when they got to go to general meetings? They lock everything else in centers like it's Fort Knox, to the point that if there was a real emergency with leaks or anything, there's no access to it. I don't know where the concept came with DFTA or with Department of the Youth Services to think they can just come into our developments and just lock things up. They don't pay any rent. They take up space as a luxury. We have a lot of in-house issues going on that I think that, although it's encouraging that they're providing certain programs, that we really need to meet with them on a one-on-one, because there's a lot more problems that meets the eye than just NYCHA being able to address certain issues. If they don't
Ms.
have
Lozano,
access
can I just ask, are you saying that CCOP wants to meet with them?
Yes, we need to meet with them because there's a lot of unethical things going on. I'm just putting it very, very candidly because I have limited time to speak.
So is a
so
meeting with DIFTA, DYCD, and perhaps Cornerstone?
Yes, and also to find out about safety and security because tenant patrol doesn't work. It's $1 million down the tubes because that's how much is spent on that program. Nobody is really sitting in buildings like they used to because we don't have NCOs. So I'm going to put them on the boiling of what CCOP. And on behalf of CCOP, I am requesting on behalf of my colleagues and anybody else that is involved with us that we need to speak with DIFTA. I think that the age group should be a lot younger because of the fact that I got 55 plus seniors that want to have something to do, and they shouldn't be ousted because of the fact of their age. So that's a form of discrimination if we're going to go on the race.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to ask Ms. Mack, what would the channel be? Is the channel through you to facilitate that meeting with CCOP?
I will relay this back to our InterGov, and they will be handling it. In regard to the age, I would like to say that it is not our requirement. It is a requirement from the state. And I think it's based on the Older American Acts that our services are only reimbursable if the participant is age 60 or over. So it's not a rule that we make.
It's time to be innovative, being that they're trying to shove our seniors to be technically astute in computers, and they're not going to be technically astute because a lot of them, half of them can't even see. They can't even get their apartments clean. And I think that we need to revisit that even on the state and city level because of the fact that our seniors are living a lot longer, and we have a population that is being technically ignored.
Okay, so Ms. Lozano, so we're gonna follow up with that meeting with DIFTA. I see Mr. Hall has his hand up.
Yes, I heard with and I don't want to mess her name up. Miss Mamouche had mentioned with regards to the tracker, and that's very interesting because NYCHA is trying to get residents to make a decision on whether or not they'd like to go into the PAC program or the trust program or remain Section 9. And one of the things that was readily necessary was the fact that this needs assessment data that was just mentioned is essential for all residents in order to make a decision of that nature. And I had no idea why NYCHA thought they can go forward and just ask residents to pick and choose when they have no knowledge of what's in the best interest of their particular development. So I find that tracking data very interesting. I was looking for that 2 months ago, but I'm glad it's there to help the capital projects. But NYCHA needs to take an earful and listen to that, because that's what's necessary for residents to make an objective decision as to whether or not they'd like to join the PAC or the bond program or remain Section 9. I rest.
Well, okay, well, this is excellent. I think that's a good, it's a positive note that that information is out there, and we're going to try to make it more, NYCHA is going to try to make it more accessible. We have only 2 more minutes, and so I'm going to thank everyone for their participation. Dan, do you have any closing remarks on behalf of the monitor? We'll note the next CAC meeting is Tuesday, February 7th. If anyone would like to contact the monitor, it's all here on the screen, monitor at NYCHAmonitor.com. Our phone number is 347-809-5555, toll free 844-309-6080. Dan, we'll let you close it.
Thanks, Edna. As usual, a lot of good things were discussed at this meeting. As I said before, Chief Secreto went off, where the monitor is definitely going to be working with his office, with the NYPD, with the fire department. Safety and security is a huge issue. Obviously, it's an all hands on deck kind of situation. Otherwise, these issues are just not going to get resolved and aren't going to move forward in terms of creating better better situations at the development level. So that is definitely one of the things that we'll be committed to. We have great people on this, Chief Thompson, you're terrific in terms of your dedication. That's clear. In terms of your presentations and the things that you do for this committee, along with the fire department and Chief Secreto. So we'll just move ahead and get things improved.
Great. So let me thank all of the CAC members. Thank NYCHA monitor team, Floretta, Patricia, Chase, Sharon, Tamika, and all the production assistance that we have in getting this off the ground. And we wish everyone who is celebrating a happy and wonderful and safe holiday, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thanks,
Thank you
Edna.
all. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Take care.